Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. Nobody becomes an icon by staying comfortable. These are the moments that stretch them and shape them. Real stories, real strategies, real leadership. The titles are public. The turning points were private. Until now.
I'm Heather Cole, finance leader, executive coach, and proud member of FEI. My goal is simple. Take the stories behind the titles and turn them into lessons you can use. If you've ever looked successful on paper but felt the weight of, am I doing this right? You're in the right place. Stories, strategy, leadership. Let's get into it. Today on the FEI Icons podcast, I'm joined by Muneera Carr, the Chief Accounting Officer at Wells Fargo. Muneera shares a career story built the hard way, starting with night jobs and minimum wage work, then taking one step at a time through PwC, the SEC, and into senior finance leadership roles, including the CFO's office. In this episode, you'll hear what makes the difference, how advocates can open doors, but results and work ethic keep them open. Why building range across roles and experiences compounds your leadership, and how emotional intelligence is learned, sometimes through life's most demanding seasons. We also talk about the future of finance and how to think about AI as an enabler, and why the real work is building the right foundation and operational model underneath it. Muneera, I was really excited when I saw you accepted the invitation to be on our Icons podcast, because the first time I saw you was last year at the FEI Icons event in Fort Lauderdale. And I just have to tell you, I was amazed by your story and your journey and dedication to step-by-step approach and your family. And I'm really excited to have you here today. Well, welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. I am super excited to have our guest today. I had the fortunate experience of seeing her at the FEI Icons event last year. She took the stage. She wowed the stage with her story and her journey. So welcome today, Muneera Carr. Welcome, Muneera. I'm not even going to try and do your story justice. Why don't we just hop right in? Help us understand who you are and a little bit of your background.
Well, Heather, thank you for those kind words. I'm so excited to be here with you. You're setting up high expectations, so let's see how we do this, okay? You asked, who am I? I'm just going to say that my story is simple. I'm not even supposed to be here, quite honestly. I'm a poor kid from a foreign country who has done night jobs, who has taken one step at a time from minimum wage work at Arby's and dry cleaners to going to PwC, to going to the SEC as a fellow, to eventually becoming a regional bank CFO, and now the controller and chief accounting officer of Wells Fargo. So it's a long journey, a journey with courage, and one that turned courage into competence and then trust. My hope is that with this conversation, your listeners can also get some inspiration and know that they can win despite the odds.
Excellent. Well, I love that. You mentioned that you weren't gifted or anointed with this pathway. You honored the struggle, I'm going to call it. In that journey, I'm guessing you had some cheerleaders, advisors, or mentors along the way. And if so, maybe you can share what were their words of wisdom, or what did they give you?
I think maybe when you ask this question, I'm going to go back maybe first to my parents. My parents, neither one of them are college educated, but they did want my siblings and me to have a better life. And so they invested in our education, they sacrificed for it. And so maybe it begins there in the sense that I learned my work ethic and I learned my values from my parents. And then as I think about those who have helped me on this journey, it's actually been a lot of different people along the way. The first partner I work for at PwC, the friend and colleague who referred me to the SEC, a retiring CFO who saw my potential and decided to recommend me in the role of a CFO. So I do think, and many of these individuals, by the way, were men. And so I did appreciate their support because their voice amplified the work that I did. But I want to say this next piece sort of gently. While I had all these people helping me and the support opened the doors, the results and the work ethic and what I did kept those doors open. And so that partnership, which is performance on your own part combined with advocacy of others, sort of has shaped how I lead today and is that winning combination that people should try to seek as they are trying to sort of further their own careers and find the right support.
I love that. It's like the harmony of hard work
Yes.
and giving people to be your cheerleaders, right? It's not one or the other. There's not like, oh, let me choose you.
That's right.
Unless you've done the work.
It's not just about who you know, it's also about what you do.
Yeah, because who you know isn't going to get you very far if you don't.
That's right.
You don't have the substance, right?
Exactly.
So if you were to go back and look at your younger self, because, one of the things I'm really jazzed about lately is really helping younger generations, right? When I was coming up in the ranks, we kind of viewed women as having one seat at the table. It was like a little bit of a let me have the seat. And I think there's been a shift. Maybe it's post Me Too, maybe it's been coming for a long time. But I think there's this new vibe where it's like, how many of them can I help to get to where their potential can take them? In that, what recommendations would you have maybe to your younger self or maybe, people in your life, especially women that are starting their journey?
It's a very good question. And I think that when I actually look at the arc of my life and I look at the decisions that I made, very interestingly, the decisions I made were actually family first. And yet it wasn't just all career, but I think putting family first and those who matter to you first. And then my career just met me where I was, by the way. And that is important. I think as women, and as you're talking about career, we should remember that for us, that's always been an important part of who we are and our identities. We are the glue in our family life, and we also want a strong career. And so, as I think about what advice I can give people, I think the advice should be twofold. One, make the right decisions that work for you and personally what you can live with. And at the same time, seek the support from the family and friends to help you navigate your career. So it's a little bit of I'll say a balancing act of a different variety where you're putting those who matter to you first, but also then asking them to be part of your career journey as well. I feel like that's probably the secret formula for me because I don't think I could have done what I did without my family's support. But on the other hand, when I look back at some really big decisions, and Heather, I can give you examples. I was with PwC. I wanted to make partner. That was my dream. And I found out unexpectedly and very fortunately that I'm pregnant with my third child. And I knew that 3 children and public accounting wasn't going to work. And so I kind of gave up on my dream and decided I was going to leave PwC and go work at Bank of America and sort of go down the industry route more for family purposes. So that's an example where the choice was actually based more on personal circumstances. I would say Comerica, which was a large regional bank headquartered here in Dallas, we had been away from home for 8 years. And my siblings and parents live here. My husband's family lives here. And so coming back home was really important. And so we did do that. And that's yet another example where I wasn't taking the Comerica job because I was going to be controller of Comerica. I was taking the Comerica job because the discussion in the house was, if I don't take this job, then how else do we get home? And so both these different changes did help shape my overall career because they brought lots of different perspectives into the mix. But it goes to show you that as women, I want to make sure that I do make this point because many times that's what we struggle with the most is how do we take care of our family and our professional life? And I think that you could do both. And that's sort of the way at least I manage mine.
I love this. There's so many nuggets here that I'm like literally writing down as we're talking. A couple nuggets that I'm hearing, and maybe this is incorrect, but that taking a different course, like you have the vision to be this certain position, but sometimes, you know what? It's okay to change direction. I like to say sometimes U-turns are okay, or sometimes you get caught in the roundabout, right? You're like, I'm not sure where I'm going to go yet. But I think that giving everyone grace to say, that's okay. It's okay to change.
Completely agree with you. So maybe I will add to what you're saying and say that it's not a single rung on a ladder that you have to climb to get ahead career wise. To your point, when you're saying a U turn, I would say I go around telling people sometimes I have range. And I use this word, I have range, in many different contexts. Okay. It could be personally at home where my children look at me a little bit strangely and I might say, well, I have range. I can do this and I can do that. I would say the same thing is probably true of my career. When I think about sort of the steps that I've taken, they're not just one step on top of the other. It's more, I will go be an auditor with the Big Four. I will go be a regulator with the SEC. I will go be a preparer of financial statements with one of the large banks. I will go be a CFO. So it's the range of doing all these different things. And quite honestly, that range gives you breadth that perhaps helps you in the long run. And like I said, decision should come from what's most important to you first.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I've done more and more of these icon podcasts, that is a common undertone in all the women I've interviewed is that it's not a ladder. It's a journey. It has many dimensions to it. And the other thing that I'm hearing kind of in your story that I'd like to just kind of pull out of it is I actually read a book recently and it said, define your answers to your decisions based on what you want your legacy to be. Like if you stopped and gave your script for your retirement party that someone was going to tell about you, what would you want that to say? So I'd love to ask you, what is your legacy that you are like, this is what I want to be known for?
So it's interesting that you asked this question, which is sort of more eulogy-like. There's a post-mortem, or I'm trying to remember the right words. I read a Wall Street Journal article that was focused on this very topic, Heather. And it was at the beginning of the year when people think about making resolutions. Instead of doing resolutions, which are, of course, just 1 year focused, how do you think about the question you're asking, which is legacy and this kind of more eulogy like approach on what do you want people to say about you? And then that shapes what you accomplish in that year as one step towards a longer journey. And so, what would people say about me? I left Comerica after 10 years, and that was perhaps a role in which I had the opportunity to lead more people. So it was people wise, more impactful. Nothing compared to today, by the way, because today that impact has expanded further still. And when I left, I got all these text messages on my phone. I got emails from people. And I think there was a common theme. And the common theme was that people learned from me that most everybody said I wasn't easy, and I'm not, but that I was fair and that I was willing to be helpful to them. So if that's what people say about me after my professional career, I think I'll call that a win. I'll call that a success.
You know what's interesting about that? You're such this amazing, powerful career woman, but those attributes sound very motherly like caring. And so I think that you're sharing the story that you kind of can have both. Like we don't have to wear the big shouldered suits of the 80s and wear the wingtips to fit in.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. I wasn't always emotionally intelligent. And you're so right to put your finger on the pulse that I sound motherly. So I want to double click on that. Okay. When I look back and I think about challenges in my life, and we kind of started this podcast with that, I think in the early stretch of my life, it was just about changing my life circumstances, and poverty being a key part of that. That's what built my work ethic and my perseverance. It made me gritty, it made me deeply solution oriented because stuff just didn't come easy. So you had to find a way. It also made me empathetic because I know what it's like to do without. I know what it's like to have to live in different places, find yourself with new expectations, deal with a lot of uncertainty. But I'm going to come back to parenting because that's what you're bringing up. And I will say, I don't know what I was thinking when I had my first child. I had these visions of rocking my child to sleep and putting the child in the crib, and the child was going to stay asleep all night long. Exactly not the way things went. But I will say that goes to show how unexpected the differences, that you can have between your expectations and reality. But my children have taught me so much. They have been the ones, like, I know in my heart that they want nothing more to do than to please me as their parent. And yet there would be times when things would not exactly go according to plan. Grades would not be done, certain things would not be completed. And it really gave me pause and said, I know they want to do what will make me most happy. And yet it's not happening. So why is that? And it makes you really stop and explore and see things from their perspective. And could you have said things differently? Could the communication be different? How do you motivate a child in a way where it's really their idea and not your idea, because and they're taking the accountability and responsibility for their decisions. And so a lot of all of that translates to the workplace. And I see my team as sort of that extension of family. And they've heard this stuff from me, by the way. I'm not just saying this to you on the podcast. And mothering is perhaps exactly the right word. And in a way, I'm actually glad that you're pointing it out.
And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Cross Country Consulting. As leaders in finance, you're not just managing numbers, you're architecting the future of your enterprise. But how do you navigate the next wave of transformation driven by AI? At Cross Country Consulting, we see AI not just as a technology, but as a catalyst for delivering better experiences and driving sustainable growth. We believe the future is augmented by agents, powered by data, and guided by human expertise. And that's why we partner with finance leaders to implement responsible, human-centered AI solutions. We help you automate complex processes, unlock predictive insights, and enhance decision-making, all while making sure that your outputs are audit-ready and secure. Ready to transform your finance function with confidence? Explore how Cross Country Consulting can accelerate your AI innovation. To learn more, visit crosscountry-consulting.com/AI.
Well, I think the emotional intelligence, when we talk, accounting, office of finance, we're not kind of known as like the warm, fuzzy emotional intelligence type. Is there, in your eyes, a way you can learn that? Can you build on that? Is it like a muscle to be developed?
I would say for me, I think life is the best teacher. And in this instance, I would say that my children were. I think self-awareness, like you realize that you're missing something. And I did. I'm a very logical thinker. And so when we think about feelings versus logic, I'm actually a little bit light on the feeling side of things, but I've recognized the importance. And I'll tell you this story. One of the very first speeches I gave when I became CFO at Comerica was in the month of March. It was International Women's Day. I was the keynote speaker. And they had told me to come and give a speech. And I struggled with what to say. And the reason I struggled, since you're asking me, is it a muscle? This is why I'm telling you this story, okay? Because till that point, I had given technical speeches. And I can talk about accounting like in my sleep. Anytime I'm ready, this is the FASB, this is the effective date, these are things you need to think about. Now I'm like, what am I going to say? And I must have restarted my speech for that day many different times. And ultimately, I ended up with something that was very much in line with the discussion that we are having. And I stood up there and I talked about my life. And I can tell you that that was such a powerful speech because I could see the effect that it had on people. My story is moving. And so there was an edge in my voice, and I could see that I connected with people at a much deeper level than I ever had before. And I think that that alone gives you the motivation to say, you know what, this is what people care about. Like the FASB and the technical stuff, we will get it. But people want to connect more at that human emotional level. And those are the stories that really resonate. So that was sort of my children, these kinds of life experiences, and then the desire to learn and be better. You put all that together, and well, here you are.
It's an interesting shift, at least from where coming up I was, right? I felt as a woman coming up in finance and tech, I had to hide that story, that my story was my weakness. And what I'm hearing from you as a leader, a very well-respected leader, is your story is your superpower. Would you agree with that?
I think inspiration is contagious. I can't tell you the number of people that come to me after I say my story, telling me how it impacted them. So I can tell you from firsthand experience and from what others are telling me that it matters and they need to see the human side of you. Having said that, when it comes to business, Heather, make no mistake. In those settings, it's all logic, it's not feelings. In these settings, it's feelings, less logic. So I guess what I'm saying is there is not just a single way for one to be. You have to be who you are, but you have to bring the right version of yourself to the right discussions. You can't be in a business meeting and get all emotional, but you can be in a setting where you're really talking about how to think and feel. And leadership is a lot about those kinds of things. It is about humans and feeling and so hence this side of the equation.
Again, we're kind of finding a harmony, right? It's almost like a harmony between logic and emotion.
That's right.
What I believe I'm hearing you say is that people will follow the emotional leader that connects with them. The leader will stay in power when they make good logical decisions.
That's right. I can either go around telling people, please follow me, or they can feel like I'm a leader who understands them, who connects with them, and they want to follow me because their heart tells them to do so. And I would rather have the latter.
Excellent. If you were to look to the future, what do you see the big changes in the finance and accounting professions are? And what advice should we give people, especially with the whole factor of AI coming in very rapidly?
Yeah, so maybe we'll just talk about trends for just a second. I mean, I know AI is getting a lot of airtime, and by the way, it should. It is going to accelerate what's possible. But I do think that there are other things that we don't talk about. And I'll maybe talk a little bit more structurally, and then I'll talk a little bit more behaviorally. Structurally, when I think about companies, I will say that many companies have been around for many, many years. When I think about Wells Fargo as an example, we've been around for a good long time. Our general ledger, our systems were set up way back when, and the world has changed. And even our model for how we do accounting and finance has been the same for all these years. And one has to stop and say that if we knew everything we knew today and we were designing something from scratch, not what we inherited, what would that look like? And that sort of becomes your North Star that you should be chasing. But that requires a very fundamental change in the core systems architecture and operating model and how the talent is aligned to the different types of things that need to be done. And so it's not just about AI, because AI will only be as good as the foundation or the architecture that it sits on. And so I do think that more discussions need to happen on operating model, people seeing products end to end, understanding the genesis of, let's say, accounting and finance from the time you get into a particular product until you've done all the accounting reporting and sent the information to all the right stakeholders. That's more structurally what we should be talking about as far as the future is concerned. Behaviorally, I would say what I see the most is I see that there are two different groups. You've got the finance people who do financy things, and you've got the accountants who do the accounting things. The finance team typically will be forward looking because they're all about forecasts. The accounting team is all about looking back into the past. The finance team is all about the business and the performance. The accounting team is all about what are the rules, how do the transactions show up in the financial statements. And what I'll tell you is, in my role as CFO, I got the opportunity to see what happens when you bring it all together, the accounting and the finance side. And, as I look to the future, I think accountants could benefit if they understood the business better. They'll make better accounting judgments. And the finance people could benefit if they understand, if they're more detail oriented and understand the rigor of the rules. It will make their forecasts more sharper and more grounded. So I think this next generation, as they're coming up, they should try to make these disciplines be a bit more integrated and not so siloed. And then building upon that, see AI more as an enabler and not a threat because it can handle all your repeated stuff. I mean, I can't say that I'm the most technology forward person, but I have embraced AI and it has elevated the work that I do. It hasn't replaced it. I can get to certain things faster. It's not doing my thinking for me. And I'd like to hope that that's true for others as well. So, what am I saying? The package is let's try to integrate the finance, accounting, and technology pieces together. And if we do that, then I think as a profession, we will all be better off for it.
As a person that came up as a finance, technology, and lawyer, you are saying what I think everyone needs to hear is that blending, right? My niece once asked me, Anne, what's the difference between accounting and finance? I said, accounting knows the rules, follows the rules, and makes sure they're governed. Finance looks at the rules, says, how can we get a little bit outside and push the boundaries
True?
and make more money?
Yes, very true. And maybe both need to do a little bit of what the other is doing, So,
And I think that there's some truth to that across the organization, right? The more finance and accounting can understand the limitations, maybe the challenges of other areas of the business, that's where we're going to get the creative solutions.
I agree. I completely agree because they know the rules the best, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And there are no surprises because many times people think things will happen and then they look at the financials and it's like, what happened? Well, maybe you can't recognize this right now. Maybe you need to wait. So different things do happen. And this way, everyone is at least collaborating well together and truly understanding, how these things show up and what it means to the company's future.
Yes, like understanding the why of the other side.
That's correct. That's correct. So true.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, where did our time go? This has been so much fun. I think next time we're going to do it in cocktail hour, though.
Exactly. Support that.
As we wrap up, what is something that you're working on or maybe something that you're reading, something that you've set for 2026 to kind of either learn more or grow into? What is one of those things for you on your list?
So, a few things from me. By the way, I believe in learning something new every single year. Just personally, it could be something small. I mean, I'm not as young as I used to be. So, pickleball, adding that to my list, just as an example, some new hobby. It also prepares you for the next stage of your life and makes life more exciting. But setting all that aside, Wells Fargo as a company has its own story. It's a story of overcoming its own challenges and reinventing itself. So we are at a very exciting place as a company. We are trying to grow our business, come up with new products. There are new problems to solve as we look forward to the future. So I find all of that quite energizing. And then I touched on this a little bit that I had a large team. I have an even bigger team. I have about 1,600 people that roll up to me. And that means that the impact of leadership is quite wide and helping sort of shape the future and improving how we work, reducing some of the, I'll say, manual nature of work, simplifying overbuilt processes, just making it easier for everyone. That's another large part where we are investing our time and I'm deeply involved. And then beyond all of this, I am now an empty nester. And so I have more time to do other things beyond the commitments that one has when one has a younger family. And so paying it forward is a large part of the equation. And so I'm a part of an organization called Scholarship America that provides individuals access to education from a financial standpoint. And so being able to be part of organizations like that, education was a game changer in my life. I wouldn't be here without it. My parents did it for me. And so this is a little bit of all of that. So you're hearing a little bit of sort of where I find myself in my life and where the company finds itself, but also personal stuff where you're sort of trying to make a difference in the world and maybe make your own life a little bit more exciting with new hobbies. So a little bit of everything.
Oh, I love that. I think if you were to ask your kids and your family, they are extremely proud of you and your journey. I know you've been a big inspiration for me when I first saw you on stage about a year ago. So I thank you for your time today. If we had one parting statement that you want to say, what would that be?
It would be, and I always end on this note, so I appreciate you giving me the chance to do this. Gratefulness in life makes you recognize what you have versus what you don't have. And that is a huge contributor to happiness. And so I will end on the note that I am grateful for every chapter in my life, the difficult ones, the busy ones, the formative ones. All of them collectively brought me here. And that's what excites me so much, that there is still more ahead to learn, to build, to contribute. And I feel like, Heather, this session that I've had with you, if it helps one person move forward more confidently on their path, then it's time that was worth spending talking about this. So thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for being here, Muneera. We appreciate you. Listeners, here's some key takeaways. Build range and pair it with results. Support and sponsorship matter, but performance sustains momentum. And as you grow, leadership isn't only logic, it's emotional intelligence, clarity, and how you motivate people to move with you. On AI, treat AI as an enabler, but remember, it's only as powerful as the foundation and operating model beneath it. So go ahead, choose one action this week, strengthen one area of your range, or have a direct conversation that advances you on your unique path. I'm Heather Call. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on our next episode of FEI Icons.
Your career doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in rooms, relationships, and real conversations. So here's your next move. Expand your network through the FEI network, because the right connections increase your net worth and your impact. Plug into the programs, the people, and the community, and keep showing up until opportunity recognizes your name.